Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the session Why You Should Recruit for EQ over IQ in Today's Talent Market. For this session, Ceipal is joined by Matt Galliard, CMO, Cloud Call, and Chris Murphy, SVP Sales North America at Cloud Call. But before we launch into today's session, there are a few housekeeping items to cover. First, each session will be recorded and available on demand through Ceipal's website. A follow-up email will be sent to all registrants with the recording and any other relevant material. Second, we'll have a Q&A session following the discussion. All participants have entered the session muted, so please enter your questions in the Q&A or session chat on your right-hand menu, and we will address them at the end of the panel. And finally, we are on a strict schedule today. To save time for Q&A period, I'll give a 5-minute warning to the panelists. After the 5-minute warning, the speaker will conclude their conversation and will open for Q&A. Please note that this session will end promptly at the scheduled time. At that point, we encourage you to visit our agenda tab and explore our other topics and speakers in 4 different tracks. If you do not visit the agenda tab, you will be automatically redirected to the next session in this track. That's it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. Matt Galliard is Cloud Call's Chief Sales and Marketing Officer. Matt is a strategic, data-driven sales and marketing leader with a solid track record in scaling high-growth tech businesses. Matt's previous senior leadership roles have been at companies such as Microsoft, Nokia, and Orange. He is experienced in both large corporations and startups, building enduring global brand propositions through inspiring and leading teams in executional excellence. Chris Murphy is the SVP Sales North America at Cloud Call. Chris has a track record of building effective sales teams that deliver measurable value to help customers achieve their ROI goals. Thank you, Matt and Chris, for joining us today. And now over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Natiz. Okay, so I'll just share my screen. So thank you very much for your very kind introduction. So we're really excited to be with you today, and we so appreciate your time, and we really appreciate you joining us, because I know you've had a very packed day and you've seen a lot of great presentations already. So let's get on with our subject. So why should you recruit for EQ over IQ in today's talent market? So introduction, we've had a very kind and very lengthy introduction. So Matt Galliard, I'm based in the UK, and my very good friend and colleague Chris Murphy, based in the US, and I'm going to be taking through sort of the bulk of the subject, and then towards the end I'll hand over to Chris. So what is EQ? So before we sort of get into too much of the detail, I just want to sort of remind everybody exactly what that means. So we hear about IQ a lot, the intellectual quota, the thing that tells you how intelligent you are. But at the same side, it's sort of to balance that out is your emotional quota, known as EQ. And through this presentation, I'm going to be switching between the words EQ and emotional intelligence. They're very, very similar phrases. So before we start, I just thought I would set out and just explain exactly what we mean by EQ. And why do I personally find this interesting and important in what we do within sort of working and supporting our friends within the staffing and recruitment world, but also as employers and recruiters of teams ourselves. So something I believe quite passionately, and I think is so important to remember, that technology is there to help people do what they do better and to take away some of the mundane. But one of the things that we shouldn't do as we scale and automate and do so many clever things in our recruitment processes, and also how we evaluate candidates, is that we shouldn't reduce people just to numbers and data points alone. And because by doing that, we leave out really important aspects of this individual person and how they may fit within a particular organization and fulfill a role. So, why considering EQ as well as IQ? It's not that one is without the other. It's really about a balance. And why is it important within hiring? Because as I've said, that, you know, we are more than just the achievements. We are more than just the list of things that we have done in our past. We're more than just the places that we have been or the schools that we went to. We are unique individuals with unique talents and unique personalities. And if we just recruit for IQ alone, this leaves the emotional being out of the equation. And it's really important that we understand the whole person. And really, that's going to be the bulk of what I talk about today. And I think we're very familiar with IQ, and we're very familiar with evaluating whether somebody is maybe right for the role. But again, I think, you know, today we're going to focus very much on the emotional quota. So if this is a subject that you're particularly interested in, I'm not an expert on it. I'm very interested in it. And as a business, is something that we do consider to make sure that we can support businesses. But if it's something you really want to dive sort of deeper into and to learn more, I don't think you can really go better than to read almost any of the books by Daniel Goleman. So as a psychologist and author, he is the sort of quintessential author of all things emotional intelligence. And in doing my research for today and getting prepared and pulling together the content that I want to sort of talk to you about today, there was one thing in particular that really sort of jumped out as part of his research that Daniel had done that I thought was really relevant to what, you know, today's subject was about. So he had done some analysis, some sort of meta-analysis, where they reviewed a number of businesses, you know, from the Unilevers and Boeings and of the world. And I think there was something like 137 businesses that had used some form of capability measuring, you know, the psychometric profile intelligence test, sort of measures that many businesses use to understand the capability of their teams or in their hires. And he said that there are really three main areas or criteria in which they measure capability of an individual. The first one is around the skills and the experience of a particular individual. So if you're an engineer, it's obviously engineering experience. Then you've got the cognitive and analytical ability. You know, this is somebody who's intelligent, they know how to understand data and analyze and kind of see, you know, understand meaning from those particular sources. But there was a third bucket, and this third bucket was the emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is motivation, is self-motivation, self-awareness, empathy, the sensitivity of the others around you, which allows you to collaborate. And of these three areas, whilst they're all incredibly important, one of the pieces of information, one of the findings that came from his research was when they analyzed hundreds of high-performing people at every level in an organization, what was overwhelming was that over 90% of those people that were incredibly successful, even more so as you got into more senior positions, indexed really highly in that third bucket, which was the emotional intelligence. And that's why it's so important that we have to dig deeper and understand the emotional capabilities of the people that we are hiring as part of that process, but also in our own teams. So here I'm going to just sort of ask you to sort of think about, and unfortunately if I was with you and maybe we could share some of these stories, but I just want you to consider two occasions in the past. One where you were making a hire, you were looking to fill a particular role, and this person ticked all of the boxes. They had all the right experience, they went to the right school, they'd worked in a company very similar to the one that you were hiring for. As I said, they pretty much ticked all the boxes. But for some reason, after placing them in that role, it didn't quite work out. It didn't fit. It just didn't gel. And most typically, the reason there is that their individual personality wasn't quite aligned with the sort of values or the personality of that box. So it was great, you know, ticked all the right boxes on the sort of intellectual quota side, the analytical understanding and skills and experience, but that particular personality or those particular sort of EQ skills didn't quite fit that role. But equally, we can also think of another story where we will have placed someone into a role and they had a very solid skill set. You know, they went to a good school, they had good experience, they were a pretty good all-rounder, they seemed pretty bright, you know, not like so much maybe the first one, but really solid. But what they really had was this amazing personality. They had this amazing way in which they could collaborate with others. They had a fantastic attitude in how they showed up to work and what they did and how they worked. And this person was incredibly successful. So again, it's so important. And again, you'll have your own stories that you'll be able to remember. And if you sort of think about some of the great hires that you made and some of the ones that didn't work out quite as planned, I'm sure many of them will fit into this area where it made sense on paper, but maybe there was some other aspect that was hidden that we didn't see. And then I thought it would be interesting to sort of share one of my own stories. So as we said in the introduction, I used to work for Microsoft. It was an amazing company, loved it. It was a great place to work. But unfortunately, that my particular department was transferring to the US, and I live in the UK, and my family were very happy here, just about to start school. So we decided to leave as friends. So I left Microsoft, and I got the opportunity to go and spend some time with a performance coach, a business coach. And I went into his office. I seemed pretty sure that I didn't need any help, and I just said, I need you to help me bulletproof my CV. I need you to help me show everybody how intelligent I am and how amazing my experience is. And we created this fantastic resume that together I was then able to go out and start looking for roles and speaking to recruiters and speaking to businesses. And something strange happened. I'd actually done too good a job. And what I'd done is that when I started having interviews with people, they would say, oh, you're not like what we expected. You know, you're not like the normal people that we get from Microsoft. Or we're not looking for somebody quite as corporate as you. We need somebody who's got a bit more hands-on experience. We're looking for somebody who's more creative. And for me, that was the red flag. That was where an alarm bell started to ring. I'd done such a good job of talking about all the statistics and success metrics, how you might measure what I'd done. But I'd left out one of the most important things about me and anybody that's ever worked with me is that I'm incredibly creative. And I'm really good at collaborating and working with other people. And especially working within marketing, you know, to have a hands-on, lead from the front, get stuff done kind of attitude was not coming through. So once I understood that, I was able to sort of repitch my resume to sort of reflect the whole of me, and then to kind of create other portfolios that were able to sort of demonstrate some of these other sort of soft skills that maybe weren't coming quite as strongly as I'd hoped. And I think for me personally, that was a really important learning, was to understand in how I was to present myself was as important as I would have recommended for our own products and services. So some sort of getting down to the sort of nuts and bolts now of, you know, some of the recommendations and advice that, you know, I might offer today, or some thoughts for you to sort of think about and take away, and things that I would very much sort of do for my own hiring purposes. So when finding the right talent for the right role, you know, it's very easy to sort of just list all the things that we want from them. But how do we get a job description that resonates emotionally with the right talent that we're trying to find? We know in today's market, and that's why we talk about, you know, how to acquire talent in today's market. It's becoming harder and harder. There are so many great businesses out there, and there are more businesses and maybe more roles than there are candidates. So again, helping us match those two together is so important. And one of the things that we're finding a lot ourselves, but also speaking to many, many of our customers, all within the recruitment and staffing sector, is the question of culture is coming up more and more. Why do I want to work at this business? So again, making sure that it's something as simple as the job description or the job ad or the job placement that you place really appeals to the candidate as much as just list all of the technical skills or analytical skills required of them. And does this particular ad or posting or job description express the culture of that business and who they are and where they're going at this point in time, where they are on their journey? So again, you know, giving them the information that they need, where they want to come for and apply for these roles. And does it really express the kind of individual that we're looking for? So, and again, we then move slightly further down the process and we look at the interview approach. And does the interview approach itself uncover all of the emotional capabilities of this person? So again, you will all be very experienced interviewers, but again, how do we dig deeper than what is typically seen on a resume or what often comes up in these things? So there's a much more sort of clever questioning and research that we could do within that candidate. And one of the things I want to talk about here is the sort of cultural fit and organizational structure at this stage in the journey. So businesses, they could be a startup that's kind of got to that critical point where they're now scale up. So this sort of attitude of sort of being a good all-rounder generalist, which you sort of have to be an entrepreneur at a startup stage. As you move into a sort of a scale up, you may want somebody that's got more process experience, that's got more collaboration experience, somebody that's got the capability to sort of come back and help bring people forwards, having known what sort of a good future could look like. So it's really about understanding not just the culture of the business, but where that business in their life stage at this point, and also how this role fits within that. And it's not just the skills and experience, it's what kind of person would do well in both this business at this point in time. And then looking at how we can help our teams improve their own emotional intelligence as well. So again, sort of thinking about spending time with our teams, self-evaluating as well, looking at how we might develop our own emotional intelligence capabilities, coaching and mentoring of both ourselves and of others and as our teams, and really sort of looking at what we can do to improve in some of these areas. And I know Chris is going to talk a little bit more about that shortly. And one of the things that we do ourselves, and we would absolutely recommend, especially if you're in a sort of high sales environment where you're making lots of calls or you're doing lots of recruitment placements. And one of the things that we do is we listen to the calls. We spend time retrospectively as a team, not to catch anybody out, but to just really sort of sit and listen as a peer group and listen to maybe the best and the worst call of the week and really unpick, try and understand, what we could have done better. Yes, one of the things, we observed recently, two things actually. I'll give you two stories. One was one of our customers. I was talking to one of our customers. They were looking at the analytics of all of their salespeople and all of their recruiters. And there was just this one person that just didn't seem to be closing. They just didn't seem to be achieving. And they considered very seriously letting this particular person go. But before they did that, the manager was smart enough to spend some time and just listening to a couple of calls. And one of the problems was they weren't asking at the end to close the sale. They weren't asking for the sale. They were doing a fantastic job of building rapport, which is a really strong emotional intelligence. They had empathy and they understood the customer. They understood what they needed and what they were looking for. They put forward a fantastic case of how this product would help them and support them. But what they didn't do, they didn't have the strength, or they didn't have the questioning techniques or the closing techniques to just sort of take it to that last stage and actually ask for the business and actually help close the sale. Again, that manager then pulled the person to one side. They listened to the call together. They gave them some coaching using some of the tools that we had to sort of coach and mentor them, which Chris will talk about. They were able to coach this individual, and they are now one of their highest performers. It would have been very easy to just look at the results alone, and this person would have been looking for a new job. But just by really understanding that actually they were kind of doing 2/3 of what they needed to do, but just with this one last little tweak, they were able to sort of perform better. Another one that we found is really interesting is, again, we had it was a particular customer that we were talking to, and the salespeople had such a similar pitch that they were using over and over and over again that it had just become rote. And what was happening is they weren't noticing that the customer was giving buying signals, that maybe they should stop. They weren't active listening. They were just so busy presenting at their audience. They weren't thinking about how, whether the customer was sort of leaning in at this point, or maybe they should stop talking. Or I understand that some of these buying cues were being given. They didn't have the sensitivity. They didn't have the empathy. They didn't have the rapport. They were doing a fantastic job of explaining all the virtues of the product. Again, by listening to the call, they were able to be coached and tweaked and just sort of look out for and understand his buying cues. Again, now an incredibly highly performing individuals. Again, just some examples of just making sure that emotional intelligence it's about how we behave. It's about how we collaborate with each other. It's about how we actively listen with each other as well. So how can technology help improve emotional intelligence. And this is where I'll be handing over to my colleague Chris shortly. But really, at Cloud Core or any tech or any SaaS product, really what we do is we automate a lot of stuff, and we give people the ability to do things on scale that maybe was quite mundane or quite difficult to do manually. So again, great technology, a really interesting thing. We often only use the word technology when it's not working. The technology is just not working, typical. But actually technology, when it just works great, it's seamless. It just falls into the background. And one of the things that we're really passionate about at Cloud Core is that we do not want to replace the human being. We want to be able to have the technology enable two humans to have a great conversation. Cloud Core is in the conversations business. That's what we do. So again, how can technology help two people engage more meaningfully and have an understanding of, especially within recruitment, in this particular instance, whether this person is the right person for the right company. So at this point, I'll hand over to Chris.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Why don't we skip ahead to the first slide? And just as Matt's already introduced me, so I manage the sales team in North America from our Boston office. And anyway, happy to be with you guys today. We're really excited about working with Ceipal, and especially on the sales team. We can't wait to get started. So keeping with this theme of emotional intelligence, there's a whole bunch of the features in our product. So we of course sell a phone system that integrates very nicely into applicant tracking systems, and so a number of the things we do really help facilitate the themes that Matt's been talking about today. Some of them seem really kind of dead obvious and simple, but that's kind of the idea of it. To Matt's point about technology, if it's going right, it should just work, and it should just be sort of in the background. And things like a simple concept like a click to dial, where I'll start and I'll just kind of walk through sort of our main features of our system and comment a little bit about how they help facilitate the things that Matt talked about. But you think about click to dial, you've got a whole bunch of people making a whole bunch of phone calls. If they don't have to dial the phone anymore, it's something you quickly get used to. It's not new technology, of course. Lots of people have used it, but it is one of those things you can kind of take for granted. But it is a big time saver, and it's just one less thing that you have to worry about. So as I go through these things, one of the big themes with us is always, we are striving to take as many roadblocks out of a user's way as possible so that they can concentrate on having great conversations. Because as Matt explained, that's really the business we're in. If everything else is sort of out of the way and your folks can concentrate on their job, their real job, which is to make good connections and have meaningful conversations with people, they'll be much more successful. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So just every number in your system will be lit up. You just click it once with your mouse and your phone is dialing. As soon as that happens, screens pop. The person you're calling, their candidate profile is going to immediately show up on your screen. The note screen from within the CRM system, within Ceipal will show up, so you can quickly and easily take notes. You don't have to fumble around with the technology. Again, we're making it so that everything is just presented right in front of the user, automatically, so they don't have to think about the mechanics of what they're doing. Local presence is a feature that is really a nice feature that a lot of our customers take advantage of. Basically, that allows you to display a local phone number in an area where you're calling. So if I'm calling, let's say in a US example, if I'm calling, halfway across the country, my call will show up as a local number, and it just helps the pickup rate, right? That's a big part of this, of course, in the staffing industry, is just getting people to answer the phone. And that's a great tool that helps with that. Again, the more connections that get made, the more picked up calls, the more phone conversations, the more good conversations, and the better you'll do. We have another feature called voicemail drop. So this one is another really valuable feature that, again, just makes it easier and streamlines the recruiter's day. So, you think about recruiting, say, for 3 different jobs I'm trying to fill today. What I can do with this feature is, first thing in the morning, I record 3 messages, perhaps 3 separate messages, for the 3 different jobs I'm recruiting for today. And then as I'm making calls all day long, instead of having to speak a separate message every time, I literally just click my button, my mouse once, and it will leave the appropriate message, and then it frees me up to go back and make the next call. So it's a huge time saver, but what sometimes people miss is it's a quality thing as well, because there's something known as voicemail fatigue, which is a real thing. And if I'm making calls and it's 4:00 in the afternoon and I've left messages all day long, I'm going to get sloppy and lazy, and I'm not going to leave as sharp of a message. But with this feature, I have that clean recording I made first thing in the morning, and that's what people will hear all day long. So it's a kind of a quality of communication tool as well. Call recordings, again, simple concept, but we record everything. Of course, it's at your choice, but everything gets recorded, and there's just an enormous amount of value, of course, that can be gained from going back and being able to review calls. Calls with clients or candidates. If somebody new is taking over and I'm trying to get up to speed on what's happened, I can go back and listen to the calls that people ahead of me have had. So again, just a way to empower your teams to be better and be able to have more meaningful conversations and just more value, really increase the relationships and improve the relationships. That's a big part of it. The supervisor panel is a dashboard within our system, which again, a lot of people probably have heard. If they haven't used some of these features, they probably heard of them. This allows me, let's say I'm a manager and I have a team of 10 people that I manage. I can have my dashboard customized so that I can go in to the people on my team. I can listen to their calls. I can even jump in and speak to them live during their calls. And I can even jump in and make it a 3-way conference call with the person they're talking to. So huge training feature that, again, really helps with the emotional intelligence quotient on the side of your own team versus outbound to a client. And then the Power Dialer is another tool that we have that just simply again, it removes all obstacles and just allows somebody to just crank through a whole bunch of calls and not have to worry about searching for numbers and even clicking them. It just automatically does that for you. It generally drives people's call volumes up as much as 35-40% over not having a tool like that. So anyway, what we of course would love to do is anyone that's interested, will do proper demos through our sales team and whatnot. We're really looking forward to working with Ceipal on that. And but just wanted to give you a flavor for some of the key features of our system and how they kind of tie into today's theme.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. And just really sort of come towards the end of our session and start wrapping up. Every business to be successful really needs 2 things. It needs this database. It needs to have the place in which you can hold over your information. That is Ceipal. And you also need the ability to communicate with your prospects and your clients and your particular people that you're hiring for. And that's where Cloud Call. And you can get any VoIP system It will do a pretty good job. Won't cost you a lot. But if you have something where the two come together, all of the magic happens really sort of in the overlap of that Venn diagram. And we've spent the last 18 months maybe working together with Ceipal on this integration. We're really excited about it. You know, we're incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to come and share this with you today. But again, we just felt it was really good to sort of look at, it's not just about the data. The knowledge economy is fantastic. Having facts and stats are awesome. But how do we move towards a wisdom economy? How do we take the information that we have in our systems and within our teams and within our business and start making more informed decisions? Yes, we can help people be more productive, work faster, make more placements, make more money, in many cases then save money. But the most important benefit that we stay awake at night worrying about and thinking about and developing new features for, it's really about how do we help businesses operate more intelligently and make more wise decisions. So that is the last slide. So I think we are ready for Q&A. I think we're just a couple of minutes ahead.
Thank you, Matt and Chris, for an excellent presentation and your insights on why you should recruit for EQ or IQ in today's talent market.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
So we here end the session for track 3, and we request you to join us at the closing session on track 1 as we'll be announcing raffle winners. See you there. Thank you all to our sponsors, participating companies, and attendees. See you at our next Ceipal Connect.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.